Welcome to Swipe. We've got an eclectic mix for you this week.
Alex finds out how phones are being used to help save eyesight in developing countries. I unfold some electric pedal power made for urbanites. And it's you versus an army of orc commanders in our games review.
That's all to come for you in the next 10 minutes or so, but first let's have a quick look at some of this week's tech news headlines.
Tech companies have begun investing huge amounts of money to help fight extremism. Sky News revealed firms including Facebook, Google and Twitter have invested more than £100 million in projects not just online, but in local communities too. Meanwhile, social media sites could be made to pay into a fund to tackle online bullying. The Culture Secretary's proposals for a tax follow months of complaints about abuse on the platforms and the dangers faced by children. A smart crossing that can see what's happening around it has been showcased in London. The prototype technology spans 22 metres. It can preempt movement from pedestrians and guess where their eye line is most likely to be for warnings. Snapchat launched its latest feature, context cards. It means users can swipe up on something they see to find out information like reviews, opening hours or directions. Separately, the company says it's on course to break 1 trillion snaps this year. A new smartphone for children that's controlled remotely by parents has been launched. It's called Monkey and has parental controls built into the phone's operating system so they can't be switched off or deleted.
This week was World Sight Day, and that got us thinking about technology's potential for preventing blindness. Alex found out about an app that's turning smartphones into portable tools to combat sight loss, and he went to meet the team behind it.
Your eyes are amazing. They contain millions of light-sensitive cells and allow our brains to see the world. But they're also delicate, and there's an array of conditions that can cause vision loss and, in the worst cases, blindness. And that's a huge problem facing people across the developing world. The sting is that the majority of blindness can be treated or avoided altogether. But for many of these communities, accessing this care has been more or less impossible.
Now, traditionally, medical teams trying to reach rural communities in the developing world had to lug expensive, bulky equipment over dirt tracks, and when they got there, often there wasn't the power to operate it. So the people who needed the help the most weren't able to get it. But then the solution presented itself in the form of kit most people already had in their pockets.
So what we have is, this is a universal clip which allows it to go on any smartphone. And then
Andrew and his team have developed these mobile eye scanners. They change the optics of a smartphone's camera, allowing anyone to see into the eye and share the results with medical experts.
I switch the device on, and as you look into the distance, I bring that close to your eye, and that gives me a view of the inside of your eye. So I can see your optic nerve there, which is a direct extension of your brain, and the rest of your retina as well. It's not the patients that need the phone, it's the caregivers. And so what we're doing is extending who can go and find those patients. So rather than having a doctor or a nurse or an optometrist having to go and find people who can't see, we are able to put this in the hands of non-specialists, school leavers, teachers, which means your workforce can expand hugely, meaning those who are currently not getting access to anything are being reached.
Andrew's team are about to expand their operation with a view to helping people in more than 60 countries. And there's certainly a need. Globally, there are 36 million people who are blind. 89% of them live in the developing world. More than 75% of blindness can be avoided. And by 2050, avoidable blindness is projected to increase threefold, due largely to an ageing and growing global population.
There are so many issues in the world today, people starving, dying of disease and so forth. And so poor vision is really at the bottom of the scale of priorities. But we believe that if you think of it in terms of the productivity, education outcomes, gender equality, this is something that government leaders need to take much more seriously.
Our eyes have evolved over countless generations. But in just a couple, we've seen technology present new solutions to some of the most debilitating conditions. Alex Morgan, Sky News.
Here on Swipe, we've brought you various technological feats involving two wheels in the past, but never have we brought you one that's battery-powered and fold-up. I've been to meet the makers of what they want to be the first city e-bike.
So first off, pedal down.
Pedal down.
You could call this the 2017 version of a 1975 innovation, the Brompton Folding Bicycle, but now it's electric.
Woof!
Using the bike seems fairly simple. You've got an on button here plus 3 modes offering varying degrees of assistance depending on how tired your legs are.
Right, let's give it a whiz. So I'll let you go first.
Am I just going to pedal as normal?
Just pedal as normal, know where the brakes are, and just give it some welly, and off you go.
Where do I start giving it welly?
Give it away. Yeah.
When's the electric going to kick in?
Well, it should be kicking in.
Is it? I don't think anything's happened.
What?
Turns out the bike is working, I just wasn't pedalling hard enough to feel it.
The more you want, the more it gives you. So you put a bit of push down, and suddenly you'll start seeing that it kicks in and just drives you on.
The original Brommy has gone some distance since its conception in the mid-70s. The company now has 500,000 customers riding its bikes in 44 countries. Each one is handmade here at the factory in West London in a process that lets customers design their own online.
See, this one's different to this one.
So what brought about the decision to create an e-bike?
We didn't decide now. The reality is we've been mulling this over for, 5-6 years. But an idea that you have in your head, turning that into reality, it's not a 5-minute job.
The result came after teaming up with Williams Advanced Engineering to develop a special motor for the e-bike.
There is a gear system here, a stepped epicyclic gear system. We've got our inverter in here, we've got our windings here, we've got our magnet here. It looks like your average motor, but there is nothing average about it. 10 years ago, the battery technology was nowhere near what we now have on the bike. 10 years ago, the knowledge that we have inside this motor just didn't exist. So we've had an aspiration, because we're building urban bikes, to make that more accessible to more people to enjoy cycling.
But as with anything that runs on a battery, how hefty is that power pack?
What you can do is you can move your battery from one piece of luggage to another.
That's still pretty heavy.
It is. It's a fine balance. If we want, we can go for a bigger battery.
Yeah.
Then it'll last forever. No one has to worry anything. Or we can go for a smaller battery. We've got to start with something.
The bikes won't be available until early next year, and they'll cost over £2,500 each. Brompton's tech upgrade could mark the start of some next-generation add-ons too, like this, a homing device. Press a button on your phone and your electric folded bike will find you and fly to you within a 5k radius. Only joking, that's just the company having fun. Or is it?
Video games time now, here's Lucy.
Middle-earth Shadow of War is the sequel to 2014's Shadow of Mordor. So in these games you play as a ranger named Talion, he was living his best life at the Black Gate of Mordor, but then one day the orcs rose up and killed all of the Gondorian troops, Talion and his family. Talion wasn't ready to die yet, so he joined forces with the spirit, the wraith of an elf named Celebrimbor, who, if you're a Lord of the Rings fan, you'll know as the elf who forged the Rings of Power. So between them, they're trying to get revenge on Sauron and all of his forces by building an army of their own. So Shadow of Mordor created this incredible gameplay mechanic known as the Nemesis system. So the orc hierarchy is always in flux, they're always infighting, they're always trying to get more power, but what you can do is you can manipulate the orc power structure. If you're a Lord of the Rings fan, the most fun you have in the game is basically going around talking to the orcs and chopping their heads off. It's an incredibly fun action RPG. If you're a Lord of the Rings fan, I definitely recommend it. The original Evil Within was created by Shinji Mikami, who you might know as the director of Resident Evil 4. So to say that he has pedigree in survival horror games is saying something. Basically, you're a police officer named Sebastian Castellanos. You're a disgraced police officer now. You're no longer in the force, and the daughter of yours, who you thought was dead, is actually revealed to still be alive. She's been taken by this corporation and used in a machine that generates virtual worlds. So her brain is basically the seed for this virtual world. So you have to go into this virtual world that she's created. It's a town called Union. But obviously because it's not stable, all of the nightmares that she might have experienced and thought of are also coming to life in this virtual world, and you have to go in, kill all the nightmares, and try and get your daughter back. If you like a psychological survival horror, then I definitely recommend The Evil Within 2. Layton's Mystery Journey is out this week on 3DS, and it's difficult to believe it's actually been 10 years since the first Professor Layton game. So obviously now the story's moved on a bit. We're not actually playing as the Professor anymore, Professor Herschel Layton. He's gone missing, so we're actually playing as his daughter Kat. She has a talking dog, and of course she's trying to solve investigations, solve crimes, and she does that by exploring the world, talking to people, and solving puzzles. Just basically puzzles. It can be anything from like a Sudoku to moving pictures around to make up a proper picture, or math puzzles. And it's really good because this game has actually already come out on iOS and Android devices. So what's really cool about the 3DS version is not only are you getting the full game, you're getting new costumes for Kat, new daily puzzles. I think they said they would be supporting the game for a year of free puzzles, which is really great. But if you like solving puzzles and kind of just walking around and exploring worlds that have fun music, eccentric characters, then definitely give Layton's Mystery Journey a shot.
That's it for this week's show. Join us again for more Swipe next week. And in the meantime, follow us on Twitter @SkyNewsSwipe, then you can see what we get up to throughout the week. Bye-bye.